Welcome to the Land Your Bet Sports Betting Show, NFL Week 5, which means we are back. We've got Deets on the show. We're going anytime tutties. Let's get right into it, man. Let's start with the tutties.
Yeah, and this is the least spicy of all of them, right? I'm giving you a minus number here on Deebo Samuel anytime touchdown minus 105 this week against the Cardinals. You and I both know, Josh, we live in the Bay Area. It's going to be a hot one on Saturday. Rob Thomas energy, Rob Thomas plus Santana. And Cardinals defense, I mean, you can gash him up like a slasher film. Happy Spooktober, everybody. And it's brutal. But here's where I stand on it. And this is why I'm just taking it at the minus money. The 49ers gave Christian McCaffrey the ball in the red zone again and again and again. And it wasn't just on runs, right? Because he's your running back. No, it was also on a lot of passing plays. And the reason they did that is because Christian McCaffrey forces teams near the red zone to play man-to-man. And Christian McCaffrey's always a matchup nightmare. Yep. Deebo Samuel, with Christian McCaffrey out, really has to get into the backfield a lot more in red zone situations. I'll give you a little insider. I asked Kyle Shanahan about it, and he's like, I don't want to talk about that publicly. So I think my hunch is right. And I think you're going to see more Deebo Samuel in the backfield as opposed to Jordan Mason. And that could be a straight run. That can be a Texas route, that little one go out of the backfield. I think that the Niners need to get other teams into man-to-man, playing zone in the red zone. It's easy. Not a lot of ground to cover. Playing man-to-man, that gives Deebo Samuel, gives a lot of guys a chance to make a play. I like Deebo to get a tutty here. And, if you need to sprinkle a little bit of Brandon Ayuk over on receiving yards, so be it. But I feel very confident about a Deebo touchdown, even at minus money, which is not a place I like to live on anytime touchdowns.
Agreed. I was a little bit surprised to hear that in coming back from the injury that we're going to have Deebo already at that number for the tutty here, minus 105. I'm looking at outlier.bet to see that. No qualms with any of it. I mean, the red zone stuff for him, he's going to continue to be involved close to. I mean, he's involved all over the field. He's not just a between the 20s guy. To your point, they've been keen to run him inside the red zone, like you said as well. He could be coming out of the backfield plenty. So that's what he brings to this team. I have no qualms with it. You're talking about the Cardinals. Who knows what they are? But overall, you've been able to score on them in a variety of ways. I'm just pulling up their defensive metrics real quick on
You're gonna have to do some scrolling, my friend. Yeah, it's at the bottom.
I figured. I'm looking at drop back EPA for the defense to start, and I'm gonna go for a while before I find the Arizona 29. Cardinals. There they are. I had to move the bottom screen that I'm using.
Josh, folks can't see it. I'm not pointing at anything, but you go just across the board there. EPA per play, 0.123 per play. Success rate, 54. That's huge. That means that this isn't funny money, right? Like, okay, they're getting the EPA, but it's been on a couple of big plays. No, success rate tells you that you're consistently getting big yardage, successful yardage, play after play. You go even further than that. Drop back EPA is at 0.2. That's crazy. Yeah. Drop back success rates at 60. That's absurd. Rush EPA. I mean, listen, I guess they're okay against the run, but no, they're still pretty bad against the run. They're not the worst against the run, but they're still bad against the run. And rush success rates almost 50%. I think they're a well-coached team. They don't have any dudes. They have Budda Baker and then a bunch of randos. And ultimately, they're a rebuilding team. That's what you expect. But going on the road, you obviously know the game script isn't going to work out for them very well because Kyler Murray is a guy who has to operate on the script to look successful. Now, he can make some stuff happen off script, but it's not a recipe for success. I would even feel more comfortable proffering the idea of Deebo Samuel first touchdown. If you want to get saucy, you want that plus money, Deebo Samuel first touchdown, because not only can he score as a receiver, we know that about Deebo Samuel. He makes one guy miss and it's game over, and they're going to be scheming him up left, right, and center because everything's going to be open over the middle of the field on the side. Everything. They don't cover anybody. Right. But now you also, I think, get the rushing element, and in particular, a need to give him the ball in the red zone because he's a playmaker. And for all of the great players that the Niners have, playmaker, I don't know qualify. Like Brandon Ayuk's not like a playmaker. George Kittle made a play. He's injured. He's going to play, but like you got some questions there. Juwan Jennings is a playmaker. Juwan Jennings, do you want to go in on that? Like Deebo Samuel's got to be the bell cow here. This is put up or shut up time. Niners have another game on Thursday. Don't dick around. Give the ball to Deebo. And I would say give the ball to Deebo on the backfield on a little choice route going over the middle. I feel good about it.
I like it. Yeah, there's some different ways to play it too if you wanted to get saucy with it. But even minus 105 for a guy who's going to be around their top weapon, I think, especially between the 20s, maybe if you're inside the 5, you're talking about Jordan Mason now. But I agree with everything for the game script for this team. And we got some little insider info from a man who covers the 49ers pretty closely. So I love that. Anytime that Kyle tells you he doesn't want to tell you the answer to your question, you're onto something. So
I'm onto something.
Let's get into my first one here. I'm going to talk about a guy who's just trending upward. I'm talking about T. Higgins. I really think this is a T. Higgins game. In this one, there's a couple things here. We're talking about the Bengals hosting the Ravens. And for Higgins, we know the sort of offseason issues that then extended into him missing the first couple of games with the injury, right? So now he's back. We're talking about him and what his I'm really wondering about his targets, what's been his involvement in the offense. And I love the fact that last week we just saw him get the 10 targets. That's what this is a huge reasoning behind this, right? You talk about Baltimore. We're talking about probably the best run defense in the league, at least up there in the top 3, right? We're talking about rushing success rate, number 1, rushing EPA defensively. They're down at 6 now. Down, I say, because they were 2 last week. So they're still going to be a team that you don't run on them. And that's a big reason why you can see over here versus wide receivers and in receptions in general, they're in the bottom half of the league. And overall, in terms of receptions and receiving yards, going to be bottom 5 or 6. So you ain't running on them. And we know that the Bengals aren't getting much push with their offensive line anyway. So even if they wanted to run on them, they probably wouldn't be able to do it as successfully. They're going to have to open up the run game if they want anything with receptions. And this comes down to zone. And that's one thing that I love here. And I actually already have it up, which I love to show, which is that the Ravens, they play zone at about the 15th most. So still middle of the pack, but 71.5% is the majority of the time that you're running zone. You can look at some wide receiver coverages. All this stuff is, and the link is in the description of the video for fantasy points if you want to use it. I'm looking over here at the coverage and the receiving separation stuff and who does best against zone, things of that nature. You can see T. Higgins has a win rate against zones of nearly 20%. The really stark difference here is between he and Ja'Marr Chase, right? The 10% difference in who is better at playing zone. Ja'Marr Chase will cook you with man, has a lot better speed and a lot more ability to get past you. T. Higgins is a massive body that we know loves to just plant himself, either go to the corner of the end zone or just plant himself and get a jump ball like a tight end because he's like 6'5" and has a massive vertical. So I'm loving him the touchdowns. I also think the over 4.5 receptions is one of my favorite player props because it's still plus money for him to get the 4.5 right here. I believe that's still on FanDuel. So plus 116 for 5 receptions on what I'm projecting to be at least 8 targets in this game. Gotta like that for a guy who's running. What's his routes per his yards per route right now is about 9.9. It could go up for sure. It was at 12 last year and the year before. So
it was a slow start for him, right? Because not only injury, but also just no training camp really. I'm buying in on the Bengals offense overall right now. I know that Baltimore has some pretty good numbers against the run. You showed them. I don't disagree with them. But when you watch them, I never got the sense that it's impossible to run against them. I don't think you're going to have big chunks. You're not going to go for 5 a play or anything. And I'll get into that a little bit later. But I think the Baltimore defense, not having Mike McDonald around, pretty susceptible. And I think there's some questions on that defensive line as well.
Yeah, no doubt. And which is weird because Seattle's even sucks butt right now. But at any rate, moving into your second pick here, I do like this one. We got a bit of a revenge narrative, right?
Yes, Stefon Diggs. Listen, he's a good player. I know that he gets knocked down and everyone's talking, is he number 3 on the He's a damn good player. Houston needs to get its act together a little bit here. We've had now back-to-back weeks of underperformance, at least in my estimation. But he's gotten 21 targets in the last 2 games. He ran in a touchdown against Jacksonville. That's important to me. It's become clear, at least in watching the Jacksonville Texans game, which is some real sicko energy, that they're trying to get Stefon Diggs more involved because he's been one of the best receivers in the NFL for years and years now. And why wouldn't you want to involve it? They've integrated him now. And the big storyline out of all this is it doesn't matter if you're a good team, a bad team, a young team, an old team. Training camp is not effective for getting teams ready for the season anymore. They don't have the players because of holdouts or injuries, and they're so cautious. They're not prepared. They don't have game action because no one treats the preseason with any reverence anymore. I'm not being an old man yelling at the cloud. I don't give a shit one way or another. But the issue is that it takes these teams some time to figure out and some game tape to figure out who's good, who's not, who do we need to highlight, who do we need to downgrade. They're using September as the preseason, and coming out of this last 2 games, it just appears to me pretty clearly that they're like, hey, we need to use this weapon that we bought for 1 year more and more. So Stephon Diggs in Buffalo, they're going to have 1 or 2 plays where they're going to be like, let's try to get him a house call here so that we get the big Sports Center narrative and Twitter narrative and all that.
Yeah.
I think that stuff plays. I really do. And I think that Houston's going to try to be giving him the ball because they have been trying to give him the ball, and they have every reason in the world to try to give him the ball here against a Buffalo team whose defense is, needless to say, a bit questionable and, coming off a shorter week.
Yep. 100%. I'm just pulling up Stephon because I want to show why I would go with the touchdowns or receptions before I went with yards. It's just what we know about him is the ADOT. You've got Nico Collins, even Tank Dell running fly routes and long post routes. So you don't really need Stephon Diggs to go past, what's his ADOT right now, 7 yards. Right. What he's done with it after the catch as well. But also it's the red zone targets, right? 3 of them already, 2 or 3 tutties off of that, by the way. So all of his red zone targets are turning into touchdowns, and they're not very long, which is fine. We really actually prefer that in this situation if we're just talking about receptions or even a tutty. He's the one down low, and Dalton Schultz has not been around. I don't know where he's been. He's been less than effective. He's been non-existent. So yeah, this is the new Dalton Schultz, if you will, with actual speed. So, and
you also have questions in the running game right now with Houston, and Clint Kubiak is pretty. I'm sorry. Which one of the Shanahan disciples runs there? Bobby Slowick. They're all the same to me. They run obviously not the strict Kyle Shanahan outside zone 21 personnel stuff, but they should be better in the run game. I feel like this is the week where they have to sort of break through and again get down to brass tacks here, because there's no they've already used their fuck around money. Like they've already put themselves in a situation where it's like, hey, we were fixing to go to the Super Bowl here. Maybe that was a long shot, but we were being talked about that way. We need to get back to establishing some dominance, and you just have to go to the guys that they haven't fed him before, but this dude's eaten for years and years and years in the league. And I think it's just time to get down to business here. I don't care if he has 1 catch for 1 yard. If it has a touchdown, it's paying plus 160. So let's boogie. And again, seeing him run one in, that was really eye-opening for me, because he always has the chance to catch one, especially when he's the short option. They're going to put him in the slot a lot, so he's going to have matchup one-on-one there. Totally. But being able to bring him on the end around as well, that's really interesting to me.
Agreed. Yep. Yeah. I like the Diggs pick a lot. I like him for receptions as well in this one. And I'm going to move to number 2, a guy that I think, I think we both like Chuba today. I'm talking about Chuba Hubbard. So I'm pulling up Chuba. I believe he's still plus 135. It dropped a little bit after it opened at plus 145 for Chuba's tutty, but I still think the fact that you're getting this number for him is great. I tried to convince my couple people last week that Kyren Williams was a great bet against the Bears. They didn't believe me because all they saw was Bears defense good. But what they didn't look at, and this is just, sometimes this is what I do every day of my life. So I happen to have in the back of my head that the Bears are 18th in defensive run EPA and that they're number 2 in passing EPA. But I can also show that to you. But that what that tells me is like, the defense is on the D line and in the back, but they're just devastating cornerbacks and safety. So I think you can continue to run on them. This is a fine bet for a starting running back who now has 39 carries in his last 2 games for Chuba. Looking at his rush attempts, 21 and 18, because finally somebody listened to me and probably 9,000 million other people who were like, why is Miles Sanders getting the ball again? I don't understand what's happening here, Dave Canales. So he quarterback whisperer, not running whisperer. It took him a couple weeks. Also helps when you have Andy Dalton in, unlocking Chuba Hubbard. That's all. You
have a level of competency,
right? I mean, you can't move the ball if you don't at this point.
And by the way, there's something about the Panthers too that needs to be noted. Like when you have a temperamental owner who will make rash moves, like Dave Canales is not guaranteed. They fired their last coach halfway through his first damn season. Like there's no loyalty here, and Canales has made a really big move. Now, I don't know how much consideration and conversation was there, but they made a really big move to dump the number 1 overall pick and go with Andy Dalton. He can't pull it back. He has to go balls to the wall.
Just a quick digression. I'm going to move us on right after. If I was a coach in the NFL, there was 0 times out of 100 that I would ever go, oh, you don't want me to do this, owner? Okay, I'll do what you want me to do. If I win, you will not fire me. If I lose, you will fire me, especially if I lose doing what you don't want me to do. But it doesn't matter because it's a politics situation here. There's 2 possible outcomes. You win and you stay as coach, you lose and you don't. And granted, maybe your leash shortens if you don't do what the owner wants and then you end up losing and you have less of a rope to hang yourself with. Fine. I'm still hanging myself with a rope. I don't care if it takes me another year to do that. So I would just always be going with that route. Needless to say, that has unlocked Chuba, obviously. Deontay Johnson is back. If he wasn't, I'd actually be a little bit more scared of this bet because he's the only person that will keep this run game, the Bears defense honest against the run game from completely stacking it. The thing is, the Bears don't stack it because they don't have to. They get pressure on the quarterback without blitzing. They have the 5th best pressure rate and they have the 4th lowest blitz rate. That's a very telling story with statistics right there. Yeah. So the rush sort of adjusted defensive line yards. So the ability for the Bears to move forward is not quite there on the rush. It's a lot more there on the pass with what they're meant for. So I'm going to go ahead and love Chuba to do something against the Bears. By the way, I was just bringing up fantasy points against or just really stats against the defense. And if you look at running backs, there have been 5 rushing tutties against the Bears this year. Last year, they gave up 7. It's been 4 weeks. So this is not the same rush defense as last season.
You can move the ball on the Bears too. Like if you can scheme it up and you can get to get your first read open, you can move the ball against the Bears. Now, where the Bears kill you is when they get to, again, I'm kind of going back to this, when they just get to play zone in the red zone, not a lot of space to cover, unbelievable athletes in the secondary, and you are trying to pass it through that. That's where you get burned. They're a good turnover defense. I don't know if they're a little bend, don't break, a little Kansas City-esque. There's some energy there because, again, they're not blitzing. So
I'll just interrupt you right there to say
Andy Dalton.
And Andy Dalton INT is not a bad look, by the way. I just still think he's going to try to throw it. He hasn't thrown one yet, I don't believe, in his first 2 games playing the Bungles and the Raiders, 2 defenses that are less than impressive. So this is going to be a different situation, but you can still run the ball. And we saw it last week with Kyren Williams and the Rams. And granted, I think McVay probably a bit better of a coach at this point, but like at the same time, I still think you have to be. It's out on Canales right now. We can hold judgment on that. He's finally had a quarterback for 2 games, so I'm not ready to just not say he's as good as someone. Obviously, McVay knew what he was doing. He still ran the ball with Kyren 20 times, still got him the yards, got him the competency.
Right, like the Panthers have a level of competency, and so you're getting plus money here on the running back who no one else is getting the ball to run. In that situation. If you're on the 1 yard line, it's Chuba Hubbard. There's no tush push. There's no, here's Miles Sanders. Like it's Chuba all the way because eventually Chuba's going to be out and they're going to go with the kid from Texas. But in the meantime, run Chuba to the death. Right. And so I'm in on Chuba.
Back. Hell yeah. All right, let's stay in this game and go with your last tutty play, which
this is a saucy one.
Very sick.
It's a saucy one. It's probably I wouldn't parlay my picks because this is a little too saucy, right? But Caleb Williams looks more comfortable to me. He is not where he needs to be, right? It's not the revolution that we were promised off of Hard Knocks or anything like that. But he looks more comfortable. And when Caleb Williams is comfortable, that means he's extending plays with his feet and he's making stuff happen where there's nothing to be had. That's a really good characteristic to have when you're going up against a defense that might be decently coached, but doesn't have the dudes. And kind of has some decent corners. So just overall doesn't have the dudes. I think we saw in the preseason a couple times Caleb Williams scrambling in the red zone and then just saying, hey, no one's open. I'm going to run it in. And at plus 320, I'm feeling like the comfortability is there now to where that's a possibility. And I'll take 3 on my buck. Like that's just how I feel about it. There's a lot of ways that this could go. I also think that we have now seen in the last week or so a proliferation of trick plays. Wouldn't shock me in the least bit if they pulled a little Detroit Lions and threw the ball to them. You can do that with a guy like Keenan Allen now in the game. You can do that with a couple of the guys on that team. Yeah, Caleb Williams, just as somebody who's going to use his feet to score a touchdown, I think that it's something you have to do if you're the Bears, and you're probably more comfortable doing it now. And while I don't know if this number is going to go down in the weeks to come, I think we want to get after it a little bit earlier as opposed to later, because I really do think it's going to be a weapon for him.
It should be. They're gonna have to unlock something in that sense. They finally won a game. If they're serious about anything moving forward, we see Jaden Daniels doing it every week. It's down to minus 125 for a Jaden Daniels tutty at this point. So I'm full agreement with Caleb there. My final tutty play is going to be a man who I think frustrates people, but that is Javonte Williams. And I think it's time to get on the Javonte Williams train. If you guys would like a ticket, it's still half price. It's probably less than that right now. I think we're trending at like a quarter of its original price. But that said, Javonte showed there's a couple things that work in our favor for the positive momentum for Javonte. Finally showed that he can get more than 2.5 yards a carry last week. I think we should all just give him a quick round of applause and say, way to have 16 rushing yards, buddy, and still pull off 77 yards. That is an average rushing yard per attempt of 4.8. Unbelievable, because you see these 2.4s and 2.1s and 2.9s, and even go back to last season against the Raiders, 3.6 was a high against what was then one of the worst rush defenses and still is. And now we're in a situation where who's he playing? The beautiful Las Vegas Raiders and Mile High, who are just atrocious on defense right now, especially against the rush. That's really what.
But at least the vibes are good, Josh.
Oh, are they good in Vegas?
I don't know. There's a show cause on vibes.
Right, exactly. Yes. So I don't know that the vibes are that high. They did. It was that win was so Raiders. It was like this isn't going to help us, but we beat the best.
So low. The vibes could not be worse, Josh. I was being fatuous.
Oh, I know. And what I'm saying is that it was the most Raiders thing possible to lose the way they lost, then beat the Ravens in a way that you're like, whoa, they have to be good. They beat the Ravens. And then what happened? So they lost to the team that now is, whatever. They're not as bad. They got Andy Dalton. But yeah, real quick for him. I think the thing that I love is the rush share going in his direction. Rookie Tyler Beatty, all of the best to him. Nasty injury last week, going to be out for a long time. So now you've got a dude who is coming off a good rushing performance against a good rush defense, and is their offensive line and both their lines really finally both of their lines are legitimate enough that if you start to pick the Broncos to win a few games here and there, I ain't gonna talk trash on you. Like, they're not the laughing stock anymore. Bo Nix is more competent than Russell Wilson was in Sean Payton's offense. Competent might not be the word, but effective I still think is a word, other than the last few of last season. But moving past that, Danger Russ. Let's ride. So I'm going to ride with Javonte to start picking things up. I think the rushing yards at 50.1.5 are okay. I think you could even look for a first touchdown for him. I just think once you see a running back, it's like watching somebody put the ball in the hoop. They've got the momentum. Keep giving them the rock at this point. So I think that the vibes in Denver are actually the highest they've been since Sean Payton got there.